The entire estate goes to Ryan Delaney, the lawyer announced, not looking up from the paper in his hand. My heart thudded. I sat frozen in the back corner of the conference room, next to the coat rack. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Whitmore and Langston LLP, casting warm light on a moment that felt impossibly cold. Wait, what? I heard myself whisper. Ryan, my cousin who hadn't visited Dad in over 7 years, grinned like he'd just won the lottery. Mom's face was unreadable, but she didn't look shocked. That was what scared me. I looked around the table, hoping someone would say it was a mistake, that the real Will was coming next. That Dad didn't really leave everything to Ryan. The house, the land, the investments, the silver pocket watch he'd promised me when I was 12. But no one spoke. Not even the lawyer. And I didn't cry. Not there. Not yet. I just picked up my bag, stood slowly, and walked out. I knew one thing for sure. My father didn't write that will. And I was going to prove it. My name is Nathaniel Carter, but most people just call me Nate. Growing up in South Carolina, I didn't have a big family, just my dad, my Aunt Beth, and my cousin Ryan. My mom passed away when I was 9, and after that, it was just Dad and me in the creaky old house he built with his bare hands back in the 80s. That place was more than home. It was our history. My father, Gerald Carter, was a hard man to understand but easy to love. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it meant something. And when my mom died, he poured all of his love, quiet and unspoken, into me. It showed in how he'd pack my lunch every morning even when he was running late, how he sat through every parent-teacher conference in uncomfortable folding chairs after a 12-hour shift at the mill. I never doubted for a second that he cared. I also never doubted that I was his world. But if you ask my Aunt Beth or cousin Ryan, you'd think I was some distant third cousin crashing the family reunion. Beth Delaney, Dad's sister, was different from him in every possible way. Where he was quiet, she was loud. Where he was loyal, she was opportunistic. She'd married into money and made sure everyone knew it. Country club memberships, monogrammed towels, her kids enrolled in private schools with names that sounded like old British castles. Ryan was her only son. We were the same age, but from the start, it felt like he lived in a different universe. When we were kids, I remember one Christmas at Aunt Beth's house. I brought a wooden jewelry box I'd made in shop class as a gift for her. It had a tiny carved hummingbird on the lid. I'd worked on it for 2 weeks. She smiled when I handed it to her. But then she turned to Ryan, who was showing off a Bluetooth speaker his dad had bought him, and said loudly, "Now that's a real gift." I never forgot that moment. I laughed it off back then. I got good at doing that, but inside it stung. It always stung. The truth is, I was the quiet one. The helper. The one who never needed much. I always figured if I just stayed kind, stayed useful, they'd love me the way they said they did. And for a while, I convinced myself they did. Dad, though? Dad always saw it. He never liked Beth's tone when she spoke to me. He once told me, "Family doesn't always mean love, son. Sometimes, family just means people who share your last name." Still, he kept peace in the family, even when Aunt Beth treated him like he was beneath her. As we got older, Ryan and I went down 2 very different paths. I put myself through community college, got a degree in mechanical engineering, and started working full-time to support Dad after his stroke. I took night shifts and overtime. I skipped vacations. I cleaned out his bedpan. I learned how to manage his insulin and figured out how to remodel the downstairs bathroom so he wouldn't have to climb stairs. Ryan? Ryan lived in Charlotte, bounced between jobs in real estate, luxury car sales, and tech consulting, which, near as I could tell, just meant he was unemployed and reposting memes about hustle culture. He called Dad maybe twice a year. Showed up for family dinners empty-handed, with some new Rolex knockoff and another story about his latest 6-figure startup. But to Aunt Beth, he was golden. And she never let me forget that I wasn't. There was this one time, my dad's 65th birthday. I'd organized the whole thing. Rented a small pavilion at the lake, brought in his favorite barbecue from Randy's Smokehouse, even baked his favorite chocolate pecan cake from scratch. Ryan showed up 2 hours late in a rented Corvette, blasting music like it was spring break. He brought a bottle of wine he'd picked up last minute and spent the whole evening bragging about a deal he was just about to close. The worst part? People listened. My Aunt Beth practically beamed every time he spoke. One of our cousins actually said, "Ryan's got real charisma, huh?" Meanwhile, I was busy making sure Dad didn't overdo his sodium or forget to take his heart meds. At the end of the night, as I packed up the folding chairs, Dad pulled me aside. "You know," he said, "I don't say it enough, but I see you. Everything you do. Every damn thing. Don't think for a second I don't." I nodded, throat tight. That was my dad. Not loud, not flashy, but real. In the last year of his life, Dad's health took a turn. I moved back into the house full-time, set up a home monitoring system, adjusted my work schedule to be remote, even though it meant cutting my hours in half. I cooked every meal, cleaned every surface, bathed him when he couldn't bathe himself. I watched a man who once carried sheetrock on his shoulders now struggle to lift a spoon. And still, Ryan didn't come. Not until 2 weeks before Dad died. He walked in wearing designer sunglasses and smelling like imported cologne. I had to stop myself from slamming the door in his face. "I just want to say goodbye," he said casually, like this was some quick lunch break on his calendar. Dad couldn't speak by then. He'd lost motor function in half his body. But he was aware. I saw the tears gather in the corners of his eyes when Ryan leaned over his bed. After 15 minutes, Ryan patted me on the back, said, "You're doing great, Nate," and left. That was the last time he saw Dad. The night my father passed, I held his hand. His breath had grown shallow, his skin cool. The nurse gave me a small nod and stepped out of the room. "It's okay, Dad," I whispered. "I've got it from here."
He didn't respond, but I know he heard me.
I stayed in that chair for hours, even after the machines went silent. A week later, I met with his lawyer, Franklin Rhodes, a kind, elderly man Dad had trusted for years. Franklin said something strange. "Your father was very clear about his intentions," he told me. "He wanted you to have everything. I've never seen someone plan so carefully." I nodded. That sounded like Dad. But then he hesitated. "I haven't been able to locate the updated documents. They were supposed to be filed last fall." He mentioned bringing them in, but nothing's turned up. My stomach sank. We both knew Dad was forgetful, and he hadn't been well. But Franklin was sure there had been changes. "I'll look into it," I told him. And then came the official reading with a different lawyer, one hired by Beth. That's when I knew something was off. They said the will had been located in the study. A study that I cleaned top to bottom. A study where I'd never seen a safe, never found any envelope, never once saw a printed legal document. The signature was Dad's, but it was shaky, like someone had copied it by hand or forced it out of him in his final days. The contents? Everything to Ryan. Every asset. Every bank account. Every property. Not a single mention of me. Not even the pocket watch. The day after the reading, I sat in my truck in the parking lot of Whitmore and Langston and stared at the steering wheel for 10 full minutes. I didn't cry. I just thought, they did it. They really did it. They used Dad's silence, his illness, his trust, and they rewrote the end of his story. But I had a decision to make. I could let them erase me like they always tried to, or I could fight. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and found the name I hadn't used in over 3 years. Madeline Jacobs. She was the best estate and fraud attorney in Charleston, and someone I once dated in college before life got in the way. I took a breath and hit call. Madeline answered on the 3rd ring. "Nate." "Hey, Maddie. I know it's been a while, but I need your help." There was a pause on the line. Then her voice softened. "What happened?" "I think my family forged my dad's will." That was all it took. Madeline wasn't just any lawyer. She was sharp, relentless, and didn't tolerate injustice. We hadn't spoken in years, but when we were in law school, she used to say, "No one rewrites the truth on my watch." And now I needed her to help me do exactly that. The first thing she did was request a copy of the new will from Beth's attorney. While we waited, I began compiling everything I had: photos of my time caring for Dad, texts where he talked about his plans, voice memos he'd recorded for himself, including one from last summer. Reminder, talk to Franklin. Update the will. Leave the house to Nate. The land too. He earned it. Hearing his voice in that memo nearly broke me.
But it also strengthened me.
I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being dramatic. My dad wanted me to have what he built. And someone had erased that on purpose. When Madeline got the file, she called me within minutes. There are red flags all over this thing, she said. She pointed out that the signature was dated 2 weeks before Dad passed, during a time when he was already barely coherent. The document didn't mention a witness. The language was clumsy, like it had been copied and pasted from a free template. This isn't Franklin's work, she said. Not even close. Then she added something that made my blood run cold. There's a chance your father didn't sign this at all. I went to confront my Aunt Beth that weekend. She met me at her pristine kitchen island, sipping coffee, like we were catching up over brunch. Ryan was nowhere in sight. I just came from Madeline Jacobs' office, I said. That got her attention. You lawyered up, she said, cocking a brow. I have questions. About the will. She smiled, smirked really. I was wondering when you'd stop playing martyr and start whining. I stared at her, stunned. You think I'm whining because I'm asking why my father's last wishes were ignored? Oh, come on, Nathaniel. She set her cup down hard. Your dad was old.
Sick.
Confused half the time. He changed his mind. He wanted Ryan to have it. I clenched my jaw. Then why didn't Franklin have the new documents? Her smile faded. You're grieving, she said coolly. I understand. But this is what Gerald wanted. Don't make it uglier than it has to be. I walked out without another word. But inside, something snapped. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Madeline brought in a handwriting expert. We got a subpoena to review Dad's medical records. The doctors confirmed that, by the date on the signature, my father could barely move his right hand.
He'd been on morphine. Disoriented.
Fading. There was no way he signed a detailed legal document in that state. Madeline filed an official petition to contest the will. That's when the real pressure started. I got a call from my cousin Ryan, the first in over a year. Nate, come on, he said. We're family. Let's not blow this up. You stole from me. It wasn't me. Mom handled it. I didn't even read the damn thing until the reading. I almost believed him, until I remembered the way he'd smirked in that room. Save it, I said. You can talk to my lawyer from now on.
He sighed.
You're gonna regret this. What followed was the slow unraveling of everything I thought I knew. Beth started spinning narratives to the rest of the family that I was greedy, that I was trying to rewrite history, that I was angry about being left out and couldn't let go. One cousin blocked me. Another unfriended me and posted something vague like, some people only care about the money once the casket closes. They didn't know what I knew. They didn't see what I saw. They believed the loudest voice, and Beth had always been the loudest. One night, I got a call from Franklin Rhodes, Dad's original lawyer. I've been digging, he said. There's a chance your father did bring me a revised draft last fall. I can't find the file, which is strange, but I found an old email he sent. He forwarded it to me. In the email, my dad wrote, Franklin, enclosed is the updated version. Let me know if anything's missing. Nate deserves it all. He earned it. This is for him.
Gee.
The attachment was gone, but the words were there. And that changed everything. Beth's lawyer tried to delay the hearing, filed motion after motion to stall, claimed emotional duress, family strain, unclear medical history. But Madeline countered each one. She's buying time, she said, because she knows she's losing. During all this, I started having dreams about my dad. In one, he stood in the doorway of the old barn, smiling as the wind blew through the trees. He didn't speak, just nodded at me like he was saying, keep going. I woke up with tears in my eyes and a strange, new clarity. I wasn't doing this for money. I was doing it because he trusted me. Because no one gets to rewrite the last words of a dying man. Then came the final blow. One morning, Madeline walked into her office and found an anonymous envelope waiting on her desk. Inside was a USB stick.
On it,
A video file, dated exactly 6 weeks before my father passed. In the video, a nurse named Helena Morris was assisting him at his bedside. In the background, I heard myself, younger, exhausted, asking her about meds. I was there, just outside frame. Dad, barely audible, said, "Beth's been asking about the will again. Keeps pushing." But I told her, everything goes to Nate. My son deserves it.
He's all I have.
Helena must have recorded it in case something happened. Maybe she'd sensed the tension. Maybe she just knew. She'd retired shortly after and hadn't seen the news. Until she did. And she sent that file. We submitted the video as evidence. Beth's attorney panicked. Within days, they offered to settle, to offer me a portion of the estate and avoid embarrassment. But Madeline and I said no. The truth didn't need to be split. It needed to be seen. After declining the settlement, I didn't post about it. I didn't rant, didn't call cousins to tell my side, didn't text the relatives who had ghosted me the moment I contested the will. I just stepped back.
Quietly.
Completely. I stopped answering family group chats, turned off notifications, took the money I had left and moved into a small rental 2 towns over. It wasn't fancy, mismatched tiles in the kitchen and a leaky bathroom faucet, but it was mine. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't taking care of anyone but myself. And for once, that didn't feel selfish. It felt sacred. I withdrew from more than just people. I canceled the automatic transfers I used to send to Aunt Beth every Christmas, a gift she never once thanked me for. I removed Ryan's number from my phone. I unfollowed every account connected to anyone who had gone radio silent after the will was read. It was strange at first, that empty quiet, but it didn't take long to get used to it. Silence has a way of clearing the fog. The more I withdrew, the more clearly I saw who I'd been and who I was becoming. I also stopped justifying myself. No more long paragraphs. No more, I'm not trying to cause drama, but messages. The people who mattered never needed an explanation. The ones who demanded one weren't listening anyway. Instead, I poured my energy into something new, documentation. Madeline advised me to gather everything I had, so I did, quietly, like someone building a case no one thought they'd have the strength to pursue. I compiled every voicemail from Dad, every bank transaction where I'd paid for his meds or groceries, every photo of me adjusting his oxygen tank, or spoon-feeding him when he couldn't lift a hand. Every detail mattered now. Even silence has a paper trail, if you know where to look. At night, I read. Not courtroom briefs or legal blogs, but memoirs. I read the stories of people who had been cut out, erased, or betrayed by the ones who were supposed to protect them. There was something comforting in the pattern. It wasn't just me. There's always a quiet one in the family. The giver. The one who picks up the pieces without applause. And more often than not, that person gets discarded the moment they stop bleeding for everyone else. But in those stories, I saw something else too. Transformation. Not revenge. Not anger. Just becoming. Madeline worked in the background, filing motions, coordinating with Helena the nurse for her sworn statement, and requesting a handwriting analyst from the state's forensics division. And I stayed still. Stillness, I learned, is power. When you've been taught to constantly do in order to earn love, choosing to be is the loudest act of rebellion there is. I stopped explaining, stopped chasing, stopped showing up where I wasn't wanted. And the people who'd been using me, they noticed. 3 weeks after the video evidence was filed with the court, I got a text from Ryan. "Bro, we should talk. This doesn't need to go so far. We're cousins. We were close once." I didn't reply. Then Beth called, from a private number. I let it ring. She left a voicemail that started out warm, too warm, and ended with veiled threats about dragging the family name through the mud. I forwarded the voicemail to Madeline and blocked the number. It felt good. Not vengeful. Just peaceful. Like I'd stopped feeding a machine I never owed electricity to in the first place. One afternoon, I visited the old house. It was locked now, of course. Ryan had the keys. But I sat in the truck outside the rusted gate and watched the wind move through the trees. The barn roof sagged. The shutters needed painting. Weeds pushed through the gravel path Dad used to rake clean every weekend. That land didn't belong to me anymore. But the memories did. I closed my eyes and listened. Heard the echo of Dad's laugh, the soft creak of his rocking chair on the porch, the screen door slapping shut after a summer thunderstorm. They couldn't take that from me. Not with forged paper. Not with lies. I started journaling again. Not for court. Not for proof.
For me.
I wrote about the mornings I'd wake up at 4 a.m. to prep Dad's meds before work. The way he'd say thank you without words, just a look, a gentle nod, a squeeze of my hand. I wrote about the guilt that crept in even now, the voice that asked, what if he really did change the will? What if he loved them more? But I also wrote about what I knew. Because love doesn't skip hospital rooms. Love doesn't disappear when you need help moving a sick man to the bathroom. Love doesn't make deals behind your back and hide them in dusty drawers. I stopped telling myself I had to be the good son. That role had cost me too much.
Now, I was just Nate. Still kind.
Still strong. Still the man my father trusted when he had nothing left to give. Madeline called me 2 months into the case. We're getting close, she said. Beth's lawyer is sweating. They want another meeting. Do I have to go?
No.
You don't have to do anything but keep breathing. I'll handle the noise. I smiled. That's what I needed all along. Someone else to handle the noise. So I could keep healing in the quiet. The final straw came in the form of a social media post. Beth had posted a filtered picture of her standing on the porch of my dad's house, our house, smiling like she'd just bought a vineyard. The caption read, "Fresh start. Thank you, Gerald, for trusting us with your legacy. We'll honor it every day." It got a dozen likes and a few comments from people who didn't know any better. But one comment stood out. From someone I didn't recognize. Pretty bold to post this when the will's under dispute. And when the real caregiver was your nephew. That comment didn't get a like. But it got a screenshot. And something in me softened. I wasn't alone anymore. The courtroom was packed. The judge, a stern woman in her late 60s named Judge Marilyn Vaughn, took her seat. Her reputation was ironclad, no nonsense, zero tolerance for games. Which was exactly what I needed. Ryan sat across from me with that same smug expression he'd been wearing since the reading of the will. His attorney, Dale Fritch, adjusted his suit cuffs like he was the star of a courtroom drama. But he didn't know who my lawyer was. Then Tanner Blake stood up, sharp suit, calm tone, and a stack of evidence that would unravel everything. "Your Honor," Tanner began, voice steady, "we believe the document presented as Mr. Nolan West's final will and testament was forged." Judge Vaughn lifted an eyebrow. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Blake." Tanner didn't blink. "It is. And we have proof." He handed over packets to the court clerk. "In these folders, Your Honor, are 3 handwriting analyses conducted by independent forensic experts. Each concluded that the signature on the so-called final will does not match that of Nolan West." Judge Vaughn flipped through one of the packets, then looked up. "What about the witnesses to the will?" Tanner nodded. "Your Honor, the witnesses listed on the forged document, Mr. David Rourke and Ms. Lynn Halbier, do not exist. We hired a private investigator. These people aren't in any public record, voter registry, or employment history database. They're fabrications." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Ryan fidgeted, his eyes darting toward his lawyer, who was now furiously whispering to him. "And," Tanner continued, "we have emails retrieved from Ryan Delaney's laptop via court-approved digital forensics that detail his plan to draft the document using a template and sign it while my client was out of the country." That did it. Judge Vaughn's face hardened. "Mr. Delaney," she said, voice sharp, "do you have anything to say before I issue a ruling?" Ryan stood, voice cracking. "Your Honor, this is all twisted. I just did what I thought was right. Uncle Nolan told me he didn't want Avery burdened with the estate. He said she didn't need the responsibility." "He told you that?" Judge Vaughn cut him off. "In person?" Ryan froze. "Why, yes. I mean, yes, he did." Tanner stepped forward again. "Your Honor, My client was with her father in the hospital in the final weeks of his life. We have logs, visitor records, and signed nursing notes confirming she was present every day. Mr. Delaney never visited. Not once. Silence fell over the courtroom. Judge Vaughn leaned back in her chair. "This court finds sufficient cause to believe the will submitted was forged," she said slowly. "An investigation will continue into potential criminal charges. But as of this moment, that document is invalidated." She looked directly at me. "The estate will revert to the most recent verified will, dated 3 years prior. Miss Avery West is the primary heir." My knees buckled, but Tanner caught my elbow. Across the room, Ryan's face had drained of all color. Dale Fritch slammed his file shut, visibly furious. "You'll regret this," Ryan muttered as I walked past him. I turned to him, calm but clear.
No, Ryan.
"You will." As I stepped outside into the sunlight, my chest rose for the first time in weeks. Not because of the money or the house. Because the truth had spoken. And I hadn't let them bury me with a lie. Weeks after the court ruling, I found myself sitting on the porch of the estate, my estate. The autumn leaves rustled across the long driveway, and the same wind that once chilled me with anxiety now whispered peace. I hadn't returned here for the money. I didn't throw lavish parties or make dramatic social media announcements like Ryan probably expected. I came to rebuild what my father left behind. Not just the property, but the legacy. The staff, who had all been dismissed during the legal chaos, returned gradually, each one greeting me with cautious hope. Many had known me since childhood, and some even wept as they hugged me and thanked me for bringing the soul back to this place. I walked through the halls my father once strolled with me as a kid. Each step felt heavier with meaning now. In his study, I discovered journals, pages of his inner thoughts, filled with words of pride about me. Notes on business, philanthropy, even letters he'd never sent. It was like finding pieces of a man I thought I had lost. The one that shattered me most? A note, written a month before his death. "Avery is my strength. The one who listens more than she speaks. She's not interested in money. She's interested in meaning. That's why everything I've built must go to her. She'll protect it, not because she needs it, but because she respects it." I cried for hours. That validation wasn't just about the estate. It was about who I was, who I had become, despite the betrayal, the manipulation, and the lies. As for Ryan, news broke a week later that he was being officially charged with fraud and attempted estate theft. His face was plastered all over the internet, not as a beloved nephew, but as a cautionary tale. Even his employer dropped him. Actions, after all, have consequences.
I didn't speak to him again.
I didn't need revenge. The truth had already done that for me. Instead, I used part of the inheritance to launch something new, the Nolan Foundation. A scholarship and mentorship initiative for underprivileged youth pursuing careers in environmental science, a cause close to my father's heart. Every time I sign a grant approval or visit a young student who says, "Thank you for believing in me," I feel like my father is right beside me, nodding quietly. Because this wasn't about a will. It was about worth. And I had finally reclaimed mine.